What if someone you loved more than anything tried to take away your whole life? I was about to lose everything until I said something that made everyone in the room stop breathing. Keep watching because what happens next will shock you. The courtroom feels cold today. Really cold. Like someone left a freezer door open. My hands won't stop shaking, and I'm holding my old brown handbag so tight my fingers hurt. The room smells like dust and fear. Big windows let in gray light that makes everything look sad. Across from me sits my son, my baby boy who I held when he was born. But now he's looking at me like I'm his enemy, like I'm someone bad. Next to him is his lawyer, a tall man in a fancy black suit who keeps smiling like he knows a secret. That smile makes my stomach feel funny. My husband died 6 months ago, and now we're here fighting about his money. Feels wrong. So wrong. The judge is a man with white hair and tired eyes. He sits high up in a big chair and looks down at all of us. My son's lawyer stands up and starts talking. He uses big words and points at me. He says I'm too old to take care of money. He says I spend too much. He says I don't understand important things. Each word feels like a tiny knife. I want to yell, "That's not true." But my voice is stuck in my throat. My son just sits there, nodding along like a puppet. Does he really believe this? Does he really think his own mother is that foolish? I remember when he was 5 and lost his favorite toy truck. He cried and cried until I found it under his bed. I held him then. I fixed everything then. Now I can't fix this. The lawyer keeps talking and talking. He says my husband's money should go to my son because he's younger and smarter. Because he knows how to handle business. I feel like I'm shrinking in my chair. Getting smaller and smaller until maybe I'll just disappear. But then something inside me gets angry. A little spark that says, "Wait just a minute. My husband loved me. He chose me. He wanted me to have everything. And this man in his expensive suit doesn't know anything about us. He doesn't know about the nights my husband held my hand. He doesn't know about our life together." The judge asks if I have anything to say. Everyone turns to look at me. Let me tell you how this all started because every story has a beginning, right? My husband was the kind of man who planned everything. He made lists for grocery shopping. He checked the weather every single morning. He never forgot a birthday or an appointment. When he got very sick last year, he called me into our bedroom one sunny afternoon. The light was coming through the curtains, making everything golden and warm. He held both my hands and looked right into my eyes. "Sweetheart," he said, "I need to talk to you about something important." My heart started beating fast because I knew what was coming. He told me he made a will, which is a special paper that says who gets what when someone dies. He said he was leaving everything to me, every single thing. The house, the money, the car, everything. I started crying right there. I told him not to talk like that he was going to be fine. But he just smiled his gentle smile and wiped my tears with his thumb. "You made our life beautiful," he whispered. "You deserve to be comfortable and safe." I still have that memory tucked in my heart like a precious jewel. After he passed away, our house felt so empty and quiet. I walked through rooms that seemed too big now. I touched his favorite chair, his coffee mug, his reading glasses left on the table. Everything reminded me of him. Everything hurt. But I kept going because that's what you do. You wake up. You make breakfast. You water the plants. You keep living even when part of you wants to stop. Then my son started coming over more often. First I thought he missed his dad. I thought he wanted to be close to me. We'd sit in the kitchen and drink tea, and I'd make his favorite cookies like I always did. But then he started asking questions. Strange questions about money and bank accounts and property papers. "Mom, do you really need this big house?" he'd say. "Mom, are you sure you understand how investments work?" First, I thought he was just worried about me. Maybe he thought I was lonely or confused. So I smiled and said, "Don't worry, honey. I'm managing just fine." But the questions got pushier, more demanding. He'd bring papers for me to sign. He'd talk about selling the house and moving me somewhere smaller. He'd mention how expensive things are and how I should be careful. I started feeling uncomfortable, like something wasn't right. Then one day he came over with that lawyer. The same one sitting next to him now. They sat at my kitchen table, the same table where I'd fed my son thousands of meals, and they told me they were challenging the will. They said my husband didn't really mean to leave everything to me. They said I was too old to handle it properly. I felt like someone had dumped ice water over my head. My own child, my own baby, was trying to take everything away from me. I asked him to leave. I told them both to get out of my house. My son stood up, his face red and angry, and said, "You're being unreasonable, Mother. You're proving our point." That hurt worse than anything. After they left, I sat alone in my kitchen and cried harder than I'd cried since my husband died. I felt betrayed. Felt stupid. I felt like maybe I'd done something wrong raising him. Where did I go wrong? I gave him everything. I packed his lunches with little notes inside. I stayed up late helping with homework. I cheered at every baseball game, even the ones in the pouring rain. I taught him to say please and thank you. I taught him to be kind. Or at least I tried. The weeks before the court date were awful. Barely slept. I'd wake up at 3 in the morning, my heart pounding, worrying about what would happen. Would I lose my home? Would I end up with nothing? I'm 72 years old. I can't just start over. This house holds every memory of my life. Every wall, every corner, every creaky floorboard. I thought about calling my son, trying to talk to him one more time. But every time I picked up the phone, I couldn't do it. What would I say? Please don't do this to me. Should a mother have to beg her own child? I felt ashamed, even though I knew I hadn't done anything wrong. I talked to a few friends about it. My neighbor Betty came over with a casserole and listened to me cry. She held my hand and said, "You're stronger than you think, honey." My friend from church, Susan, told me to pray about it. I did. Prayed every night. I asked God to help my son see reason. To help him remember who I was. To help him remember love. But the court date kept getting closer and closer, like a storm you can see coming but can't stop. The morning of the court hearing, I put on my best dress, a navy blue one with little white flowers. My hands shook so badly I could barely button it. I looked at myself in the mirror and saw an old woman with worried eyes staring back. When did I get so old? When did my hair turn so gray? I made myself a cup of tea but couldn't drink it. My stomach was tied in knots. The taxi ride to the courthouse felt like it took forever and no time at all. I kept thinking about turning around, going home, hiding under my blankets. But I couldn't. I had to fight. For my husband. For myself. For everything we built together. Walking into that courthouse, I felt so small and alone. Big stone columns. Serious-looking people in suits rushing past. Cold marble floors that clicked under my shoes. I found the right courtroom and sat down on a hard wooden bench. Then I saw my son walk in with his lawyer, and my heart broke all over again. He didn't even look at me. Just walked right past like I was invisible. Like I was nothing. The judge came in and everyone stood up. Then we sat down and the whole thing started. It felt like a bad dream, the kind where you want to run but your legs won't move. The lawyer talked and talked. He made me sound terrible. Wasteful. Careless. Foolish. He said I bought expensive things I didn't need. He said I didn't understand how to manage money. He painted a picture of me that wasn't true at all. But how could I prove it? How could I make them understand? Then my son stood up. He looked right at me with cold eyes I didn't recognize. And he pointed his finger at me like I was on trial for murder. This old woman only knows how to waste what she never earned. His voice was loud and angry, bouncing off the walls. She doesn't understand the value of hard work or money. She just spends and spends. My father worked his whole life, and she's throwing it all away. I felt like he'd slapped me across the face. Old woman. That's what he called me. Not mom. Not mother. Old woman. Like I was just some stranger off the street. My eyes filled with tears, but I blinked them back. I wouldn't cry. Not here. Not in front of him. The judge wrote something down. The lawyer smiled bigger. My son sat back down, looking proud of himself. I wanted to scream. I wanted to stand up and list every sacrifice I'd made for that boy. Every dollar I saved by cutting coupons so he could have new school clothes. Every time I went without so he could have more. Every birthday party I threw, every costume I sewed, every tear I wiped away. But I just sat there, frozen, while the lawyer continued. He showed papers and charts and numbers that meant nothing to me. He talked about assets and investments and financial responsibility. He made everything sound so complicated, like I was too stupid to understand my own life. The judge kept nodding, asking questions, writing notes. I couldn't tell what he was thinking. Was he believing them? Did he think I was a foolish old woman too? The minutes ticked by so slowly. Each second felt like an hour. Finally, the lawyer finished talking. He sat down with a satisfied smirk, like he'd just won a game. The judge turned to me, his face serious and unreadable. "Ma'am," he said, "do you have anything you'd like to say in your defense?" My heart jumped into my throat. This was it. This was my only chance. I stood up slowly, my legs wobbly like a newborn deer. The whole room was watching me, waiting. My son stared at his hands. He wouldn't even look at me now. Cleared my throat. My mouth felt dry as sand. And then I remembered something. Something my husband had done that I'd almost forgotten about. A secret he'd shared with me just days before he died. Something he'd prepared for exactly this moment, as if he'd known this might happen. I opened my purse with trembling hands and pulled out a small envelope. It was wrinkled and worn because I'd been carrying it with me every day since he passed. Inside was a key. Just a small silver key that looked ordinary. But it wasn't ordinary at all. "Your Honor," I said, my voice shaky but growing stronger. "My husband left something for me. Something important. It's in a safety box at First National Bank." The judge raised his eyebrows. The lawyer stopped smiling. My son finally looked up. "What's in the box?" the judge asked. I took a deep breath. This was the moment. This was when everything would change. "Letters," I said simply. "Dozens of letters my husband wrote over the years. Letters he wrote to our son, to me, and to anyone who might question his decisions after he was gone." The room went quiet. So quiet I could hear my own heartbeat. The lawyer stood up quickly. "Your Honor, this is irregular. We haven't been notified of any such documents." But the judge held up his hand. "I'd like to see these letters," he said firmly. "Court will recess for 2 hours while we retrieve them from the bank." A court officer was sent with me to the bank. My son and his lawyer had to wait at the courthouse. As we drove to the bank, I felt lighter somehow, like a weight was lifting off my shoulders. At the bank, I gave them the key and my identification. They brought out a metal box. Inside were envelopes, so many envelopes, each one addressed in my husband's careful handwriting. We took them back to the courthouse, and the judge read them in his private office while we all waited. Those 2 hours felt like 2 days. I sat in the hallway, not speaking to anyone. My son paced back and forth, his shoes clicking on the tile floor. His lawyer kept checking his phone and frowning. Betty, my neighbor, had come to support me. She sat next to me and held my hand without saying a word. Sometimes that's all you need, someone just being there. Finally, we were called back into the courtroom. The judge looked different now. His face was softer, maybe even a little sad. He had the letters stacked neatly in front of him. "I've read these letters," he began, his voice heavy. "And I must say, they paint a very clear picture of what your husband intended." My son shifted in his seat uncomfortably. The lawyer's confident smile was completely gone. "Mr. Peterson wrote detailed letters explaining his love and gratitude for his wife," the judge continued. "He wrote about her sacrifices, her dedication, her intelligence, and her capability. He specifically addressed the possibility that someone might challenge his will. He even wrote a letter directly to his son." The judge looked at my son, then really looked at him. "Would you like to hear what your father wrote to you?" My son's face went pale. He shook his head slightly, but the judge continued anyway. He wrote, "Son, if you're fighting your mother over my money, then I failed to teach you what truly matters. Your mother gave up her dreams so you could chase yours. She worked night shifts when you were young so we could afford your education. She loved you when you were unlovable. If you can't see her worth, then you've learned nothing from me." The words hung in the air like thunder. I saw my son's eyes get shiny with tears. His jaw clenched tight. The judge wasn't finished. "Your husband also documented every financial decision made during your marriage. He kept records showing that you managed the household budget efficiently for 47 years. He noted that you suggested the investments that secured your retirement. He specifically wrote that you are more than capable of managing the estate because you've been doing it alongside him for decades." I felt tears rolling down my cheeks now, but they were different tears. Not sad tears. Proud tears. My husband had protected me even after death. He'd known me so well, understood me so completely, that he'd prepared for this exact situation. The judge cleared his throat. "Based on these letters and the evidence presented, this court finds no grounds to alter the will. The estate will remain with Mrs. Peterson, as her husband clearly intended." The gavel came down with a sharp bang. It was over. Just like that. My son sat frozen, staring at nothing. His lawyer started gathering papers quickly, probably wanting to escape as fast as possible. I stood there feeling dizzy, not quite believing what had just happened. Betty squeezed my hand so hard it hurt, but I didn't mind. "You won," she whispered. "You actually won." But it didn't feel like winning. Not really. Yes, I kept my home and my husband's legacy. But I'd lost something too. I'd lost the relationship with my son, at least for now. As people started filing out of the courtroom, I looked at him one more time. He was standing now, pulling on his coat, his movements jerky and angry. "Son," I called out softly. He stopped but didn't turn around. "Your father loved you," I said. "And so do I. That never changed, not even today." He stood there for a long moment, his back to me. Then he walked out without saying a word. His lawyer hurried after him. I watched them go, and part of me wanted to run after them to fix this somehow. But I knew I couldn't. Some things can't be fixed with a hug and cookies. Some hurts need time. Maybe lots of time. Betty drove me home. The sun was setting, painting the sky pink and orange. My house looked the same as always, but somehow it felt different now. Safer. More truly mine. I made myself a cup of tea and sat in my husband's favorite chair, something I hadn't been able to do since he died. "We did it," I whispered to the empty room. "You protected me, even now." That night, I pulled out all the letters from the box and read each one slowly. My husband's voice came through in every word. He wrote about our first date, when I spilled soda all over my dress and laughed instead of cried. He wrote about the day our son was born, how proud he was. He wrote about fights we'd had and made up from. He wrote about dreams we'd shared. In one letter addressed to me he wrote, "My dearest, if you're reading this, then I'm gone and you're facing something difficult. Remember that you are the strongest person I've ever known. You just hide it behind kindness. Don't let anyone make you feel small. You are mighty. You are worthy. You are enough." I cried reading that. Big, gulping sobs that came from deep in my chest. But they were healing tears, washing away months of doubt and fear. The next few days were strange. I kept expecting my son to call, to apologize, to say something. But my phone stayed silent. Friends did call though. News travels fast in a small town. People I hadn't heard from in years were suddenly reaching out. Some were genuinely concerned. Others were just nosy, wanting the gossip. I could tell the difference. My friend Susan brought over a whole chicken dinner. "You need to eat," she insisted, bustling around my kitchen like she owned it. And you know what? Felt good to be fussed over. Betty organized a ladies' lunch at the local diner. 6 of us crammed into a booth, eating pie and talking about everything except the court case until finally someone asked. I told them the whole story, leaving out the parts that felt too private. They listened with wide eyes and open mouths. Your own son, one of them gasped. How could he? I didn't have an answer for that. I still don't. How does love turn into greed? How does a child forget where they came from? These are questions that keep me up at night. But life goes on, doesn't it? The world keeps spinning whether you're ready or not. I started doing things I'd put off for months. Cleaned out closets. I organized photos into albums. I planted flowers in the garden. Bright yellow daisies that made me smile every time I looked at them. I even joined a book club at the library. Once a week, a group of women my age gather to discuss whatever book we're reading. Mostly we end up talking about our lives, our children, our late husbands. It's nice. It's normal. One afternoon about a month after the trial, I was in my garden pulling weeds when I heard a car door slam. I looked up and froze. It was my son's car in the driveway. My heart started pounding. He walked slowly toward me, his hands in his pockets. He looked different. Tired maybe. Older. We stared at each other for a long moment. Then he said, "Mom, can we talk?" I nodded, not trusting my voice. We went inside and I made tea because that's what you do. You make tea. We sat at the kitchen table, the scene of so many meals and conversations over the years. He wrapped his hands around the mug but didn't drink. I read the letters, he said quietly. All of them. The judge gave me copies. I waited, my hands folded in my lap. I didn't know, he continued, his voice breaking slightly. I didn't know about the night shifts you worked. You never told me. I didn't know you gave up that job you loved so you could be home when I got out of school. I didn't know about any of it. Tears rolled down his cheeks now. My baby boy, crying at my kitchen table. Part of me wanted to reach out and comfort him. But another part of me, the part that was still hurt, held back. Why? Asked simply. Why did you do this? He shook his head, wiping his eyes roughly. The lawyer convinced me. He said you were spending too much, that the money would be gone in a few years. He said I had a right to it, that Dad would have wanted me to be secure. And you believed him over me? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. He looked down at his tea. I got greedy, Mom. I saw all that money and I thought about all the things I could do with it. Buy a bigger house, take vacations, not worry about bills. I stopped thinking about what was right and only thought about what I wanted. At least he was honest. That counted for something. Your father trusted me, I said. He knew I would be smart with the money. He knew I would honor his memory and his wishes. My son nodded. I know that now. Sorry, Mom. I'm so sorry. He reached across the table for my hand. I let him take it, but I didn't squeeze back yet. Sorry doesn't erase what you did, I said gently but firmly. You hurt me deeply. You made me feel worthless in front of strangers. You tried to take away everything I have. I know, he said miserably. I know, and I don't blame you if you can't forgive me. But I had to come here and say it anyway. You deserved to hear it. We sat in silence for a while. The clock on the wall ticked steadily. Outside, birds sang in the trees. Everything felt both very ordinary and very important at the same time. Forgiveness takes time, I finally said. I can't just flip a switch and make everything okay. You broke my trust. That needs to heal. He nodded. I understand. I'll wait as long as it takes. I'll do whatever you need me to do. I looked at my son, really looked at him, and I could see both the man he'd become and the little boy he used to be. Somewhere inside him was still that child who brought me dandelions and called them flowers. That child who kissed my cheek and said I was the best mom in the world. Maybe, I said slowly, we could start with Sunday dinners. Just you and me. Nothing fancy. Just dinner and conversation. His face brightened with hope. Really? You'd want that. I want my son back, I said honestly. But the son who remembers who I am and who he is. Can you be that person? He nodded vigorously. Yes. Promise, Mom. I'll do better. I'll be better. That was 3 months ago. Now every Sunday my son comes over for dinner. First things were awkward. We didn't know what to talk about. We avoided anything serious and stuck to safe topics like weather and sports. But slowly, week by week, we started finding our way back to each other. He helped me fix the leaky faucet in the bathroom. I made his favorite pot roast. We looked through old photo albums and laughed at his terrible haircuts from the 80s. We talked about his father and cried together, which we should have done months ago. It's not perfect. Some wounds are still tender. Sometimes I catch myself pulling back, protecting my heart. And sometimes I see guilt flash across his face when he looks at me. But we're trying. That's what matters. We're both trying. I've learned a lot through all of this. I've learned that standing up for yourself doesn't make you mean or selfish. Makes you strong. I've learned that sometimes the people we love most can hurt us worst. Not because they don't love us, but because they're human and flawed and sometimes make terrible choices. I've learned that forgiveness isn't about forgetting. It's about choosing to move forward even though you remember everything. And I've learned that I'm tougher than I ever gave myself credit for. For so long I saw myself as just a mom, just a wife, just an old woman. But I'm more than that. I'm a survivor. I'm a fighter. I'm someone who knows her own worth. My friends still talk about the trial like it's the most exciting thing that ever happened in our town. And maybe it is. Small towns don't get much drama. But for me it's more than a story. It's a turning point. The moment I stopped letting others define me and started defining myself. The other day, I was planting more flowers in the garden when my neighbor's little granddaughter came over. She's about 6, with pigtails and missing front teeth. "What are you doing?" she asked, watching me dig in the dirt. "Planting flowers," I said. "Want to help?" She nodded eagerly and plopped down next to me. I handed her a small shovel and showed her how to make a hole for the bulbs. We worked together in comfortable silence for a while. Then she asked, "Are you a grandma?" Smiled. "Well, not yet. But I hope to be someday. My grandma lives far away," she said. "I miss her." "I bet she misses you too," I said, patting her hand. She helped me plant 6 more flowers, her little hands getting covered in dirt. When we finished, she looked at the garden with pride. "We did good," she announced. "Yes, we did," I agreed. As I watched her skip back to her house, I felt a pang of sadness. I don't have grandchildren yet. My son isn't married. And after everything that happened, I don't know if that relationship will ever be close enough for me to be part of his future family's life. But I'm learning to be okay with uncertainty. Life doesn't always go according to plan. Sometimes the story takes unexpected turns. You can't control everything. You can only control how you respond. That night I made myself a nice dinner. Nothing fancy, just chicken and vegetables. But I set the table properly with a real plate and a cloth napkin, not just eating out of containers over the sink like I'd been doing. I deserved to treat myself well. After dinner, I pulled out my husband's letters again. I've read them so many times I could probably recite them, but I never get tired of hearing his voice in those words. In one letter I'd missed before, tucked at the very bottom of the pile, he'd written something that made me laugh out loud. P.S. I hid $20 in the cookie jar. Buy yourself something frivolous. I ran to the kitchen and checked the old ceramic cookie jar shaped like a pig. Sure enough, there was a $20 bill folded small and tucked under the lid. Even from beyond the grave, my husband was taking care of me, making me smile. I took that $20 and went to the bookstore downtown. I bought a novel I'd been wanting to read. A silly romance with a pink cover that I never would have bought when my husband was alive because I always prioritized practical purchases. But this was for me. Just for me. Reading that book I felt young again. I stayed up late turning pages, giggling at the funny parts, swooning at the romantic parts. It was perfect. Life started feeling normal again. The sharp edges of pain dulled into something manageable. I went to my book club. Had lunch with friends. I tended my garden. I even started volunteering at the local library, reading stories to children during story hour. Those kids, with their bright eyes and boundless energy, brought me so much joy. They didn't know about court cases or family drama. They just wanted to hear about talking animals and brave princesses. One little boy always sat right at my feet, sucking his thumb and hugging a stuffed bear. After each story, he'd look up at me and whisper, "Again." It made my heart full every single time. My son noticed the changes in me. "You seem happier, Mom," he said one Sunday over dinner. Thought about it. I am, I realized. I'm learning to live again, not just exist. He smiled, a real genuine smile. "Dad would be proud of you." That almost made me cry, but in a good way. My husband would be proud. I protected what we built. I stood strong. And I was finding happiness again despite everything. Sometimes in the evenings, I sit on my porch with a cup of tea and watch the sun set. My husband and I used to do that together. I'd lean against his shoulder, and we'd talk about nothing and everything. Now I sit alone, but I don't feel lonely anymore. I feel his presence in the house we shared, in the garden we planted, in the life we created together. He's still with me in a way. Not physically, but in every choice he made to protect and love me. People sometimes ask me if I regret how things turned out. Would I do anything differently? Honestly, I don't know. Would I rather my son had never challenged the will? Course. Would I rather we'd never had that painful confrontation? Absolutely. But would I trade the strength I found? Would I give up the knowledge that I can stand on my own 2 feet? Well, never. That trial forced me to see myself clearly, to recognize my own worth, to understand that I'm more capable than anyone, including myself, ever gave me credit for. And that's worth something. That's worth a lot. My advice to anyone going through something similar: stand up for yourself. Don't let anyone make you feel small or unworthy, especially not family. Sometimes the people closest to us are the ones who hurt us most, not because they're evil, but because they're flawed and human and sometimes blinded by their own wants. But you deserve respect. You deserve to be treated well. You deserve to have your voice heard. And if you have to fight for it, even in a courtroom, even against people you love, then fight. Stand tall. Speak clearly. Know your worth. Also, keep good records. My husband's letters saved me. Documentation matters. If something is important, write it down. Keep receipts. Keep notes. Keep proof. You never know when you might need it. And surround yourself with good people. My friends carried me through the darkest days. Betty sitting with me in the courthouse. Susan bringing me meals. The ladies at book club making me laugh. We can't do life alone. We need each other. Last week my son brought me flowers. Not for any special occasion. Just because. Bright yellow daisies like the ones we planted in the garden. "I saw these and thought of you," he said, looking a little embarrassed. I buried my face in them and breathed deep. "They're perfect," I told him. And they were. Not because they were expensive or fancy, but because they meant he was thinking of me. He was trying. We still have a long way to go. Trust isn't rebuilt overnight. But these small moments, these tiny gestures, they're adding up. Like drops of water filling a bucket. Slow but steady. I'm learning to hope again. To believe that maybe, just maybe, we'll be okay. Different than before, but okay. The other day, I found an old photo album I'd forgotten about. Pictures from when my son was little. There's one of him, maybe 3 years old, covered head to toe in mud, grinning like he'd just discovered gold. I remember that day. He'd been playing in the yard after a rainstorm and slipped into the biggest puddle. Instead of crying, he started laughing and splashing. I'd been so angry at first, thinking about the mess, the laundry, the cleanup. But then I looked at his joyful face and laughed too. We ended up jumping in puddles together, both of us filthy and happy. That's the son I'm trying to find again. The one who knew how to laugh. The one who wasn't worried about money and possessions and getting his share. The one who just loved being alive. I think he's still in there somewhere. I have to believe that. So here I am now, sitting in my house surrounded by memories and hope. The future is uncertain. I don't know what next year will bring, or next month, or even tomorrow. But I know I'll face it with strength and dignity. I know I'm not the helpless old woman my son's lawyer tried to paint me as. I'm a survivor. Fighter. A woman who knows her worth. And you know what? That's enough. That's more than enough. So if you're watching this and you're going through something hard, remember this. You are stronger than you think. You are braver than you believe. And you deserve to be treated with respect and love. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Not a lawyer in a fancy suit. Not even your own child. Stand up. Speak up. Fight for what's right. 'Cause your story matters. Your life matters. You matter. I learned that the hard way, sitting in a cold courtroom, being called an old woman by my own son. But I learned it. And now I'm sharing it with you. Life is too short to let others make you feel small. Life is too precious to waste on people who don't value you. Surround yourself with love. Stand in your truth. And never ever forget that you deserve good things. Every single day I wake up and choose to be strong. Some days are harder than others. Some days I cry. Some days I doubt. But I keep going. And so can you. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for being here. If this helped you in any way, please share it with someone who needs to hear it. Leave a comment telling me your story. I'd love to hear it. And remember, we're all in this together. All of us grandmas, fighting our battles, standing our ground, loving our families even when they hurt us. Here's to us. Here's to strength. Here's to knowing our worth. And here's to never giving up no matter what.